Evening, everybody. Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
How you doing?
Good, thank you.
Good, good. Elizabeth, hi. I can see you.
Hi.
How you doing?
Fine, thanks.
Good, good. Arif, welcome. Amanda, hi.
Hello, hello.
Hi.
Makuma, Mailula, how you doing? Ang25. Hello. You might want to rename yourself, unless that's your name.
Oh, sorry, it's Andrea.
That's fine.
I don't know why it's come up. Yeah.
You never know.
I was expecting Ang Lee.
Ever hopeful.
Hey, Leo, how you doing? Good to see you. Hi, Brian. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Oh, we can hear somebody.
I remember a while back when I had. Wait, I think. Remember a while back when I had.
Right.
I'm going to mute Chris because obviously having a chat in the background whilst he's thing up. So, hi, Yvette.
Hi.
Excellent. There we go. Hey, Claire. Oh, she wasn't connected to audio. Ping. Hi, Claire.
Hello.
How you
Hi,
doing?
Claire.
Good, thanks. How are you?
Very good. Hi, Elizabeth. So we're just going to wait another minute or two just to let in the stragglers. So just in time, people. They click I think at past, and then something goes wrong, and then the tech things, and then Zoom wants to do an update, and then.
You reported a child at risk.
Hey, Amanda.
Interview later right now.
You there, Amanda?
Hi.
How you doing?
Great. Just trying to get signed in. Hello.
Hello. Good, good. Coma, I like your urban healing space photo. Very nice. Good evening, Nita.
Hello, Andy.
No problem, Chris. That's fine. I heard you chatting in the background, so I muted you. So we didn't hear anything that you just said. Just whilst we're waiting, I would love to know, one, if there's anybody that hasn't done any NLP, just pop that in the chat, say, I have no idea what I've signed up for tonight and why I'm here. Or if you have done NLP, what level have you trained up to within your journey so far within the field of NLP? Just so I know what kind of spread of people we've got joining us this evening. I'm sure many of you have heard of the Disney strategy, used Disney strategy, trained the Disney strategy. So I'd love to know what level is your NLP knowledge. Nita, practitioner, fantastic. Who did you train with, Nita?
Lisa Wake.
Ah, excellent, fantastic. Is it Nita or Nita?
Yeah. Nita, you got it right, Nita.
Leo, master practitioner here for a refresher. Brian, practitioner. Elizabeth, master practitioner. Claire, practitioner with me. Yes, I did know that one. Advanced practitioner, Yvette with Michael Dunlop, fantastic. Elizabeth, you put master practitioner with Ian McDermott, fantastic. Karen, you've trained up to trainer, awesome. Amanda, yes, master practitioner with me and Joe. Lisa, master trainer with Sue Knight, fantastic. I was chatting to Sue earlier today. I've just been near her in France, so didn't quite get a chance to meet up, but one day I will be slightly more in tune enough to be able to organise it in advance. I'll normally message her when I'm in France going, I'm around the corner from you, are you around?
Yeah. She's there a lot now.
Excellent. And Makoma, yep, you're a student with Tabiso, fantastic. And a life coaching cash master practitioner, awesome. So we've still got a couple of people just logging on. This session will finish at 9 o'clock. I like to be on time for all of us. 9 o'clock, by the way, is about an hour and a half time because I'm at 7:30. I know a number of you are logging on from around the world, so I must remember that one as well. So let's get cracking. I'm going to just spotlight Karen, who's going to do a very brief intro and then hand over to me.
I will. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. A few housekeeping bits and pieces. This is being recorded, this session, because it will be going up on our website as one of our webinar virtual workshops that we're running this year. And we're absolutely delighted to have Andy Coley join us this evening, who is very kindly going to be presenting on using the Disney strategy for creativity. Love Disney strategy, so very much looking forward to this. So and over to you, Andy, and thank you so much in advance for what I'm sure is going to be an amazing presentation.
Thank you so much, Karen. So lovely to be here, recognise a number of faces, people that I've seen from trainings that I've run or been on, or people that I've certainly been in the sphere of on things like the NLP conference and leadership summits and various other bits and pieces. So today is all about using the Disney strategy for creativity. I will be explaining a little bit about the background, about my input into how I've used the Disney strategy, some case studies about ways I've used it, and how you can use this for yourself, for your own creativity. So yeah, I just want to give you a little bit of a flow and a taster, because this virtual workshops collection was a good opportunity to be able to just showcase some of the different elements of NLP and how it's being used, because there are so many of us out there doing some fantastic things with NLP, and just being able to showcase that and talk about it. I really love that opportunity that Karen and the team at the ANLP really present us with as well. So I love this quote from Walt Disney: animation can explain whatever the mind of man, stroke or woman, let's face it, was a while ago, so everything he phrases is very patriarchal, but we'll forgive him for that for now. So animation can explain whatever the mind of woman or man can conceive, is a quote from Walt Disney. And I think that really sums up the approach that Walt Disney took. Whatever I can dream, I can actually create an animation from, and I can make it live, not just in his mind, but the minds of other people. And for me, that's why I think Walt Disney made such a good case study in this field of creativity. So first of all, before we get going, who am I? I first qualified as an NLP trainer in 2012. I joined the Association for NLP, the ANLP, in 2015, after I met Karen and Cash at an NLP conference, the one just before they took it over. And I was really delighted to get part of the collective and the community of NLP. For me, NLP is a thing that we're doing all together to further the field, not just for our own individual businesses, which is very important, but also to get people to understand that this is an amazing tool, not just for creativity, but for business, for rapport, for communication. And for me, that's what NLP is all about. I've supported things like the NLP conference and the NLP awards over the last several years. I'm also an ambassador for the NLP in the London region, and I also work on some specialist topic areas as well that I really kind of enjoy and love doing, things like healthcare, and I'm quite up on the tech. I used to be a web developer before I got into NLP. I moved from programming people to helping people reprogram themselves. So I guess the two fields aren't that dissimilar. I'm also an ANLP trainer. And I'm currently working on my own master trainer certification. So I'm at kind of that phase in my career within NLP. I won the Healthcare Award in 2019 at the NLP Awards for the work that myself and my business partner at the time, Joe Wilson, or Joe Creed, did, enabling patients to own their own health outcomes using NLP. I'm a father of two girls, I've got a stepson, and I'm a husband to an amazing woman called Sophie. Where we can, we look to use NLP ourselves and our own family. I think sometimes we all forget where we put our skill set. But for me, it's about being able to dip into these times when you've got a plan, like, oh, this is this amazing thing we could tap into to use it. Or, oh, we're having this really tricky time. What can we do to use NLP and definitely use it as much in my home life as I do in the work that I do out there with businesses. I live in Southeast London, although I must admit, I'm technically on holiday at the moment. So I'm in my mum's summer house down here in very sunny Cornwall at the moment. So that's where I'm coming to you live over the internet. I also got the opportunity to do a TEDx in March 2020, March this year, 2022. And I did that all around about the power of home. And home where it has that real power to be able to support you and also sometimes break you if home isn't the right space. And I'll share a link to that if anybody's really interested in listening to a much more personal journey in the field of NLP. So what are we going to cover today? Enough about me. We're going to talk about the history of the Disney strategy, Why is it so useful for creativity? How taking different perspectives enables you to create new ideas. How to use this for yourself and your projects. Time to play. I did mention in the preamble for this that it would be really useful for you to come here today with a project that you haven't yet got into fruition, something that you would like to use today, because today is going to be a doing day and not just a listening day, something that you would like to do or work on later when it's time to play. So have a little think about what is it you haven't yet done that you'd like to do that you could use this session for. And then I'll give you a couple of case studies, a hospital and a organization called Chili's Bottles. You might even own a Chili's bottle where I use the Disney strategy in various different ways. And then if we've got time at the end, some questions, and we'll definitely finish in just under an hour and a half's time, 9 o'clock UK time. So Robert Dilts studied Walt Disney as one of his modeling subjects in a 1994 book called The Strategies of Genius, Volume 1. There are several volumes of this, but it's Volume 1 in which he studied Walt Disney. And he drew upon contemporary reports because he couldn't meet Walt Disney. Walt Disney unfortunately had passed away by this time. And so Robert created from the reports and from the words of Walt Disney himself, what later became known as the Disney strategy. And Robert, in his article, which I've put a link to here, and the slides, by the way, will be available on the website afterwards, so you can go and view these and get the links. And it's well worth looking. The NLP is really rich, full of articles on the various different strategies. Robert in there says, Walt Disney's ability to connect to his innovative creativity with successful business strategy and popular appeal certainly qualifies him as a genius in the field of entertainment. In a way, Disney's chosen medium of expression, the animated film, characterizes the fundamental process of all genius, the ability to take something that exists in the imagination only and forge it into a physical existence that directly influences the experience of others in a positive way. It's about taking that idea and giving it life. I've got two young girls, I've already said, they're 3 and 4 years old at the moment. I can see the power of animation and imagination, how it takes them to places, takes them to worlds. I can see how they play these worlds out even further, be it something like a Disney classic in our house anyway, like Frozen or Frozen 2, through to something at the start. Steamboat Willie was Disney's first feature film starring Mickey Mouse, and how he took these ideas, put them into frame-by-frame animation and turned them into something magical, where worlds opened up, where people were able to not just take the words, but actually see, hear, feel, even start to smell and taste and really be in the presence of certain characters and certain times. And for me, that's the power of the genius of Walt Disney that Robert was really tapping into here. Now, the following statement was given by Disney as a description of his process for creating stories. And this is one of the things that Robert started to pull out when he was studying Walt Disney. So the story man, brackets and woman, but I'll let you replace that where possible. The story man must see clearly in his own mind how every piece of the story will be put. He should feel every expression, every reaction. He should get far enough away from his story to take a second look at it, to see where there is a dead phase, to see whether the personalities are going to be interesting and appealing to the audience. He should also try to see that the things that his characters are doing are of an interesting nature. Now, I know that you know from looking at this that you're already spotting with your NLP goggles on some interesting phrases in there. The see clearly, the feel. We're starting to get a few of those modalities coming out, the visual and the kinesthetic, that get far enough away from, that reminds me of something, that disassociated space, to take a second look. Interesting, that one. To see. So Robert started taking some of the phrases and the descriptions from Walt Disney himself and his process of creating stories. And that began and started to create the whole theory around the Disney strategy. And in fact, it evolved into, even for Disney themselves, looking at the way that they handled and worked on projects. Now, Disney have a team called the Imagineering team. Some of you may have watched some of the shows on Disney Plus, excuse me, that talk about the way that Disney approach their projects. The Imagineering team is a blend of imagination and engineering. So they're now the R&D team within the Walt Disney Company Corporation. So they're responsible for the creation, design, and construction of things like theme parks and attractions. And again, if you go onto Disney Plus, any of you that have got access to that channel and type in Imagineering, you will see shows that talk about the Imagineering team. They still follow the principles of the Disney strategy. They still have teams that look at projects and work out how they're going to do, work out what the big dream is, what they're looking to achieve. They have other teams that start looking at how they're going to make it possible, and other teams that come along and make sure that these things happen, that they have a flow and a project that's really workable. And that became the process and the basis of the Disney strategy. Now, I guess what is creativity? We should probably tap into that, really. It's the capacity to produce ideas that are both original and adaptive. Have you ever had times when you got to be creative? Not because you've decided to animate something or come up with some, amazing film, but just because you have to suddenly adapt. Flexibility. Flexibility. That sounds like one of those presuppositions. The person with the most flexibility owns the system, in effect. So, in other words, ideas must be both new and workable in function. Thus, creativity enables a person to adjust to novel circumstances and to solve problems that unexpectedly arise. Sometimes you have to get creative. And so it's interesting about what is creativity. We all have to get creative, whether that's flexibility, being able to solve a problem that's come up, or whether it's because we want to create something from nothing, from our imagination, and bring it into fruition. All of you here, I would imagine, have set up your companies, have set up your businesses from an idea, and you've made it happen. I know people that have changed their houses and relocated to entirely different countries to make projects happen. I've just been away on holiday. I've been to, very lucky enough to get to go to Spain and France and get the ferry over and have a lovely, fantastic week away. The day before my week away, my car broke down. Oh, and it broke down with one of those messages that was very much, don't drive your car right now. I thought, right, so how are we going to solve this? And I allowed myself to be in the pity party for a bit. Oh no, God, why did it possibly happen? Why didn't I sort something out earlier? Why didn't I get something checked? Why don't I know about the things I didn't know? You go, right, what can I do? Okay, can I hire a car? Not on a Sunday morning in Plymouth. Nope, can't hire a car. What can I do? Now, I'm fortunate enough to be at my mum's house in Cornwall and spoke to her, go, is there any chance I could borrow your car for the week? And so that's what we did. We took my mum's car on holiday instead of my car. Now, on the outside, it's like quite a simple, flexible thing. But at the time, when you're stuck in a problem, you don't always see that creativity. Sometimes it takes other people from the outside to be able to support it, or for ourselves to get out the emotion of something, to be able to see things differently. And that's creativity, to be able to be adaptive, not just original about the way that we solve something as well. And also, the whole process of learning and adapting is an iterative process. So we have to dream something, try something, get the feedback for it, and then feed it back around. And the whole process of something being iterative is that we are continuously improving that concept, that design, that product. You don't just get an idea and amazingly, it's fantastically great straight away. Now, I know that you have all failed, sometimes miserably, sometimes fantastically, sometimes with everybody knowing about it, and other times with just you. And yet you adapt, you learn, you keep going, you pick yourself up. And so that is the learning aspect of being an iterative process. And the same thing applies to the strategy of creativity and Disney strategy. Excuse me. And also the power of incubation. Incubation is this special thing where you have that idea. You like the match. Maybe that's not appropriate at the moment with all the wildfires around, but you know what I mean? You light the idea up. And that little light bulb, that little idea, just tinkles there in the corner of your imagination. And then for me, it's not normally in the bath. It's normally when I'm having a shower. Just like, oh, that's what I could do about it. Sometimes we have to have that little crux of the idea, the little spark of the idea, and then allow it to just sit there and incubate, like you do with an egg. If you're looking to create a chicken or a duck, you just let the egg sit there in the right circumstances, in the right heat, in the right setting. Just allow it to grow and grow and grow until suddenly the idea bursts forth. So never underestimate the power of letting something just sit there in the background. As a coder, I used to do this. If I couldn't fix something, rather than just getting really frustrated with it and giving up, I would just go, "Oh, I don't know how to do it yet." Then I'd next day get up, have a shower, go there. Oh, bam, right. Now I know how to do it. I'll be on the computer, don't know what the problem was. Well, the problem was me. I was stuck. I hadn't let it just sit there and try and solve itself. So for me, again, that's what the power of the Disney strategy really starts to give people. Within the strategy, there are a number of concepts that we utilize. So VAK, the visual, the auditory, and the kinesthetic, and even the olfactory and the gustatory, where you get people really associated to different states, to different ideas. We use perceptual positions. So we get people to change space, to be in different positions. We allow them to access states, creativity, productivity, that ability to be able to critique an idea. We use break states, get people to change state from one space to another. And we also use spatial anchors. Again, getting that space that they're in really anchored to a specific spot so that they're able to be able to just step back into that creativity, or step back into that productivity, or step back into that critiquing. Again, these are all things that you'll be familiar with from your practitioner, your master practitioner, your trainers, and so on. And so these, again, are the same simple techniques and tools that we're using within the Disney strategy. So what is the process? Okay, so process Disney strategy, for those of you that aren't aware of it, because I know that not everybody teaches it at practitioner level. I do come across it a lot at master practitioner level and so forth. So what is the process that I use, and which is the one that Robert talks about, again, when he shares the process? So first of all, you have to set the scope. Okay, so what is it you want to work on? Is it a problem that you haven't yet solved, or is it a dream that you want to do? Because remember, NLP is not just problem focused, it's also about outcomes that we haven't yet achieved. So what is it specifically you want to work on? Okay, so what is it specifically you want to work on? And this is where I want you to be starting to set your own scope, because I am, warning here, going to be pairing you up in a minute. You're going to be doing this. Okay, this is going to become like a little mini practice group for all of you. Okay, so set the scope. What is it that you want to work on? That's part one of the process. Part two. So first of all, before we start delving into the three main phases of the Disney strategy, we go, right, what would an outsider think about this? Now, I tend to use the outsider just in a corporate setting, because this is often like, what would a consultant say about this? Or what facts and data do we have about this problem or about this dream, about where we are? Do we have feedback? Do we have customer support? What does our Trustpilot say? Like, what's the data that we can start to collect together, okay, that tells us what's happening on the outside of this, the scope of this project that we want to work on? Typically, if I'm coaching this with a client one-to-one, and I use the Disney strategy a lot, I would probably not do much of the outsider stuff, apart from maybe, you know, what does your partner think, or what do your, you know, kids think, or, you know, what are other people saying about this dream? I might spend a bit of time here. But in a corporate setting, there might be some technical data that just kind of grounds where we are. So that's what the outsider does, first of all. Then the first main space that we step into is that of the dreamer. So the dreamer is the person who gets the creative ideas and starts to kind of create that passion, that enthusiasm, that gives them the chance to be able to imagine, okay? And in this first space, this first stage, what we do is we get this person to share the dream without any restrictions or criticism or planning. They are just sharing the dream. What's the big idea? What's the big vision? Okay. Now, some of these ideas might not be viable, and some of them might be. That doesn't matter. Let's just output all the things I'd love to do. And then, yeah, we start to get and start to determine later how we're going to make this thing happen. But first of all, in the dreamer stage, what do you want? What's the big picture? What's the big blue sky thinking? Yeah. What if it was possible? What if the vision and it all goes amazingly well? Yeah. How do we imagine our solution becoming? Yeah, and what are the benefits of applying this solution? That's the first phase. So we spend time in this dreamer, and I want you to really get people associated into it. What would you be seeing when the clients are really enjoying this work, or when your business is doing fantastically well because of this project that we put into play? Okay, so you make sure that people are really, one, going visual, but two, really associating themselves into this thing happening, working, doing really well. Okay, so that's the dreamer position. And you write down all the stuff, or they write down all their ideas, they picture them, Sometimes with teams, I get them to do post-it notes and all sorts of things. So what's the big idea? What's all the stuff that could happen when this goes really, really well? Okay. Then we break state and we go into a different space, different position. Now that we've got the dream, okay, let's take some of these ideas, some of these dreams, and start looking at what is it we can do to make them happen. And this second position is then the realist. So we're in a doing mode now, okay? So we get the chance to examine how we're going to implement the dream. Now, you might take the whole dream or aspects of the dream that have come out and then start to be able to plan them. Because what you're trying to do is chunk them down now and get them into manageable steps or concepts or ideas or components, okay? Everything should still be very constructive and about making it happen. Again, not critiquing. The critiquing will come later. It's okay. I know some of you love to step there first. That one will happen. But what we want to do first is go, right, this is the dream. How can we make this dream happen? With something like the outcomes or steps to outcome, you might want to start with the dream in mind and then work backwards. So what needs to happen for that to happen? What needs to happen for that to happen? However you do your realists, that's perfectly fine. You can do them in any of the ways that you like to be able to set goals and make goals happen. Okay. So how can we apply this idea in reality? What's the action plan? What's the timeline? How are we going to do this? You know, how are we going to evaluate this idea? That's the idea of this section. So just be able to be able to get the dream down into steps and stages. Then the third part is the critic or the spoiler, as it's sometimes called. Now, after we've created the action plan about turning the dream into a reality, this is a very critical thinking mode, okay? About discovering barriers, about applying the idea, and to kind of overcome it from a meta position with an overview. Now, it needs to be constructive for yourself and for the other person. And it's not being a critic about the dream, it's a critic about the plan. This is really important. The critic is only critiquing what the realist has come up with, not about the dream. And so you could be looking at things like, what could be wrong with the dream? What is missing? What are the risks and what are the dangers? Why can we not apply it? Are there any weaknesses? Okay. So these are the sorts of things that you're going to be then looking at within the critic element, the critic area. Okay. And then once we've done the dreamer, the realist and the critic, we then start to cycle through that process. We take the critic's ideas back to the realist looks at the dreams, and the dreamer then starts to evolve, and we flip round and we cycle through this process. So that all four elements start to get their input, and start to get the same. We start to create a robust action plan. Now, sometimes we need to do it and get the feedback and feed the feedback back in to the action plan and cycle through that process. And it allows time for creativity to flow, because sometimes we can just quash creativity by somebody coming up with an idea and go, oh, no, we can't do that. Oh, we tried that before. That's the one I hear all the time in teams. Oh, yeah, that thing that we're looking at today, we talked about that. We had another facilitator in 12 months ago. We tried that and it didn't work. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. So those are the sorts of things that we can take into the Disney strategy, because feedback is an important part of iterating through the process and getting that learning cycle. Okay. So that's the idea of the Disney strategy. 3 distinct components, the dreamer, the realist, and the critic, that work in collaboration to be able to start to come up with and make dreams happen. And that's why it's such a useful thing for creativity, because we start creatively first, then we start honing how, and then we start looking at what might go wrong and what can I do to mitigate the things that might go wrong. So I'm going to give you the opportunity and a time to have a play. Okay. What we're going to do is I'm going to put you in a moment into pairs. A couple of you popped up in the chat saying, that's okay, I want to step out from that. That's fine. When I pop you into pairs, you will be put into breakout space. If you do not wish to join the breakout space, that's perfectly okay. I'm not going to put you straight into the room. Okay. And then I'm going to give you time in that breakout space to be able to cycle through this. So you get the opportunity to do this for yourselves as a pair. Anybody that doesn't want to partake in that bit, that's fine. I'll pop you into another little breakout room, and then you can just sort of hang around there and maybe have a catch up with people whilst the others work on the Disney strategy, whatever makes you the most comfortable with that. So what am I going to get you to do? You might want to get a camera up for this part. I am going to put it into the chat. But when I go through all the steps, you might want to just take a picture or a screen grab for those of you not familiar with the process. Okay, I've done a slightly virtual refined version of the process, so it's nice and easy for you to follow. Okay, so first of all, set the scope. Pick an outcome or an issue that you'd like to get creative about. You will both get the opportunity to work on this in your breakout space. Okay, so first of all, pick the scope. Secondly, what you want to do then is sit or stand, whatever's most comfortable for you, however you get creative, in a space that allows you to get creative. I want you to remind yourself of times in the past when you've been able to dream big. Look up, get a visual, really think about and connect to times when you've been able to get creative. Set your state by remembering the resources you've had in the past. And then with this problem or this outcome that you'd like to have happen, what's your big dream? What's your ideal outcome or the scenario, what you'd like to have happen? And tell the person who's coaching you, I'm coaching with small c here, yeah, to spend time in this position, really get you to associate to that dream, yeah, and to really tell them what it is you'd like to happen. But coaches, no planning, no critiquing, just let the person know these will come later, yeah, to give that person the opportunity to just really focus on the dream. Oh, what will that look like? What will that feel like? What will that taste like? What will that smell like? What will that be like? Whatever things are appropriate. And when you've done that, what will happen? Yeah, and what difference will that make to you, to your family, to your customers, your clients? Whatever's appropriate, I'm going to allow you to ask the right kind of questions here. But spend some time, not just getting a one-word answer, but really, you know, using your skills as a coach to be able to facilitate the other person to really connecting with their dream. Then get the person to move space. And moving space, by the way, might just be, sitting slightly different position. Yeah, or it might be moving further away or standing up in a slightly different area, whatever's appropriate for the room and the space that you're using. But do make sure that they move. In this second space, they're going to be the realist. Okay, so remind yourself in times of the past when you've been able to put plans into action, to problem solve, to make things happen. And now, in this problem solving space and with those resources, think about the time, or think about what the dreamer wants. Okay. How, as a problem solver, can you make this happen? What are the steps you need to get there? What are the resources you need to make that dream happen? Yeah, over what time? So really, again, get down to some real chunks of steps that you could take in order to make that dream or aspects of that dream that have come up, really get into the finer detail. Again, using your skills as a coach, what needs to happen for that to happen, you know, and what needs to happen for that to happen, right? Really help this person get to some real things that they can be doing. Okay, this is a real doing phase in their imagination. Then leaving that space behind, going to a third space, remind yourself of a time when you've been critical about plans. Usually people don't have too much problem with this one, and taking an overview of a plan, an idea, and finding out what might go wrong and what you might do about it. And with that mindset, think about the plans that the realist has just created. What might happen? What might go wrong? What might come up? You know, I mean, global pandemics and all the things that we can't imagine might happen aside. What are all the things, yeah, that might happen that could interfere with those plans happening? Okay. And what can you do to mitigate against those things? What are the sort of things that you can come up with that enable you to be able to plan your way around those hiccups and those issues? Okay. And then finally, go back to the dreamer space. And what do you know now about the problem you've been working on or the outcome that you want? Okay. But if you're taking a picture, now's the time to take a picture or to screen grab. But I will also, I've got something prepared earlier in Notepad that I'm just going to pop into the chat. So you've got that there. So when you go into the breakout spaces, oh, there's too much text in there. Point yourselves. All right, there you go. So I've put it as 2 chat messages for all the steps. You've all got the steps somewhere, okay? before we get going into your breakout spaces, does anybody have any questions about the procedure, about the process that you're going to be following? Just before I pair you up. Speak now, or forever hold your peace. No? Cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pair you up into the breakout spaces, apart from a couple of people that mentioned that they want to just sit this one out. Let me just create that. And then just put that out. Boom. Okay, so I'm going to move you to those breakout spaces. I am going to give you 20 minutes each in order to run through this process. Okay, so you're going to get 40 minutes, quite a lot of time, but actually the time will start flowing once you start talking. So go into the room, introduce yourself, say hi to your partner, and then one of you decide who you're going to do, who's going to be the coach and the coachee first. Okay, and coach, then coach the coachee through the process. What is it you want to work on? Get into the be that dreamer position, remind yourself of a time in the past when you've had those resources as a dreamer, and now apply that to your problem or your outcome. What do you want? Blah, blah, blah. That should be about 5 minutes. Really, I want you to spend 5 minutes in each of these positions. It's really worth it for the other person. Yeah, honor the other person by getting lots out of them. Change your spaces, go into realist mode, think of a time when you've been a planner. Then spend some time there, planning, about 5 minutes. Critic, spend 5 minutes in critic, reminding yourself of the time when you've been a critic and applying those resources. And then go back and do a little bit of feedback to the person that you're working with at that moment in time. Okay? No problem at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop people into those breakout spaces. You're going to get the option to join. If you don't join, if you haven't got somebody in your room, I'm going to shuffle people around so that those that want to go through the process will get the opportunity to work with somebody. If you don't have anybody in your room for the brief moment in time, that's okay. I will make sure that we come and put people in the right spaces so that you are all paired up. And then either Cash or Karen might join you as a +1 for anybody who's got an uneven number in the rooms. So set the room at 40 minutes. You've got 20 minutes each. No questions. I'm going to open up the rooms now. See you in 40 minutes for a bit of feedback. And then we'll look at how we use this with things like teams and groups. And then we're finishing off the sessions. For anybody watching the recording, this is a good opportunity now to get these things here and start to self-coach. Give yourself that opportunity to run through this process over the next 20 minutes or so. So you also get that opportunity to be able to do this bit of self-coaching for yourself as well. Okay, so I'm going to just open up those spaces now. So welcome back, everybody. Ripped out those breakout spaces in 10 seconds, having been with each other for 40 minutes. You were probably on that one last thing that we were about to talk about that's going to be really valuable and now back into existence in this space. So sorry, not sorry, if that's what happened in there. You had 40 minutes to get through it all, so I'm sure you coped. So would anybody like to just discuss about what happened? Not looking for content, remember this is being recorded and will be part of the recording, but what was it like going through that process? If you want to share your own content, that's fine, but please do not share the content of anybody that you were coaching or working with, okay? So what was it like going through that process for yourself as a coach or as a coachee? Would anybody love to just unmute themselves and just share their experience? Amanda.
Yeah, I just want to say that it was absolutely amazing, because something that was so big and that I just haven't done it because it's, it's just so big. But by breaking it, by going through those different processes, it broke it down into little steps, and it's just like, oh, I can do the first step. I can do that little thing. and yet the dreamer is still there, but the critic even said to the dreamer that it was possible. So so that's what I found, that it broke it down into steps. That was something that, oh well, I actually can do that. So that was really helpful. Thank you, Ashley, for
Fantastic. It's great that each and every part of yourself is on board with that as well now, Amanda. Brilliant. Anybody else like to share their experience of going through that process?
Yeah, I just like to say that I enjoyed the dreamer phase, just getting it out, getting it all out without having to go and say, oh, but, you know, just keeping that away. It just allowed things to just come up. You know?
Yeah, I always say watch your butts when you're in that position, because sometimes we can butt ourselves. Nobody allows me to dream. I can't dream anymore. But I watch my toddlers, they don't care. They've got no but that comes in. They want to do this thing, they want to plan this stuff, they want to dream these dreams and play with these things. They don't self-stop at that moment in time. So it's a really valuable position to be able to get the dream out, because often, depending on who we're with, you know, in terms of business partners or life partners, sometimes people can kind of come along and but straight away. Sometimes we but ourselves. Oh, but you know, I don't know if I deserve that. Oh yeah, but it's not worked before. We end up sort of butting ourselves down as well. So being in that space, especially with a coach or a facilitator, that allows you to be kind of just keep dreaming in that space. And sometimes it can be a really uncomfortable period of time. Like 5 minutes is quite a long time to talk about my dreams. We often don't give ourselves that. We kind of put something down on a post-it note and that's my dream. And we kind of stop there. But sometimes that spending time really going on, this is what it would do for me, and this is what gives me, and this is what it would create for others, also allows you to connect to those different levels of your life purpose and your mission and the spirituality and all the other things that you can start to get through, you know, things like the neurological levels of change, like really getting what's the things that would change outside of yourself can be really valuable as well. Lisa, you put your hand up earlier. Elizabeth, then I'll come to you. That's okay.
I had lovely time with Andrea, and we actually only did it one way.
Wow.
So we were well into each of the positions, and in fairness, we ran out of time with the critic as well. Mm-hmm. So I can imagine that we could go even longer probably on this as a phase, but it was a really great exercise and really good questions. So thank you.
No problem. Yeah, and this is the thing in the coaching session. I would not be surprised to spend 40 minutes or an hour just on this part. You know, when for those of you that are trainers, when you've got, you're looking at things like breakthrough sessions with your master practitioners, if you're running that kind of course, and people go, what am I going to do in 4 hours? Like, to be honest, it's not very long when you're really getting to grips with people and their dreams and their ideas and what they want to have happen as well. So Elizabeth, I'm going to take that last comment from you.
I found the timing very helpful. Having, the 5 minutes, it really makes one concentrate. And I also found the sort of parts all fitted together much more clearly than I've experienced in the past. But actually, I thought, in fact, if I had more time, I actually felt it would have been quite helpful to have even done a timeline as part of the process. But obviously there wasn't time for that. But I did find that, the urgency of it was really quite good. It kept one really focused.
Fantastic. And this is the thing, like, remember I spoke about the incubation. So having done this session with each other, whether it was one way or both ways, and let's be honest, when you're coaching somebody, often you're also contemplating your own stuff as well. So you probably did do it both ways for those of you that took the longer period of time. Now you've got the seed that's going to incubate and start to grow, and you're going to think of this. So those timelines already exist unconsciously or in your other than conscious. And so that stuff's already going to be there for you to start to incubate on. And so when these things expand, write down some more about it, get it out of here and get it down onto something that you can step back from and really start to assess and to think about as well. And that's the power of this process, really, is that playing with it. Just a few bits that I wanted to kind of just fall upon just before we get to this is just because this is a really good process to not just use one-to-one, but also to use with things like teams. And I've used this process a lot within teams to be able to facilitate teams through this. If you do get to facilitate this with teams, and I'll give you a couple of examples how I've done it in a minute. One, make sure that all the key people are in the room with you, and that the ones that You know, because often you say, oh, I want my staff to do X, Y, and Z. Well, that's great, but you are part of the team as the management or the leaders. So you need to be there in this session as well, and have a meeting facilitator. Often that's myself, but you need somebody who's going to be able to lead a team through that process. Only focus on one thing at a time. Now, sometimes that can be done in separate meetings, like we're just going to have a meeting on the dream, and we're just going to have a meeting on the planner side. We're just going to have a meeting on the critic. Or it might be even different rooms. I know some organizations they actually moved to different meeting rooms to be in each of the different aspects. Again, we all know space has power, so therefore use that space well. Be prepared for loads of information, particularly when you're working with teams. You know, you've got loads just from working one-to-one. Imagine that times 20 and 30, and then the power of a group. You know, you'll get lots and lots of ideas down. So get it down, and then you need to start to be able to group it into chunks and manageable information. If it's you who's created this session or wants this dream to happen, don't take things personally, especially at the critic stage. Yeah, it's really important to make sure that you are in that kind of slightly removed, dissociated position to the idea when the team's discussing it, particularly if it's your idea. Practice on something small before moving on to something big. I highly recommend that with anything. And also rapport and listening, you know, to make sure that you utilize those skills a lot within the teams. And watch your butts. We already talked about that as well. You know, watch you coming in with yeah, but this and yeah, but that. Just allow the session to emerge and to happen. It certainly helps if you're facilitating something you are not emotionally connected to. So I'm very easy for me to facilitate all sorts of sessions for organizations if it doesn't make any difference to me apart from me being there to facilitate. So therefore that can also make it easier as a facilitator. Give you a couple of examples of where I've used this. So a few years ago, Royal Free Trust merged with Barnet and Chase, and the therapy services team were expected to collaborate and change the way that they worked. They were expected to work on multi-sites, and you know, they had to get minibuses and go from one place to the other, and the way that they saw patients and where they saw patients completely changed. And the manager were like, but we've told them all about it. We put something up on the notice board and we sent them an email. You know, we've told them all about these changes. I don't know why they're on board. So the staff were quite upset and quite unsettled, you know, with all these new ways of working together. And so came in to look at how it could help the therapy services team, you know, go through this change now that it had happened, but what could they do to get the best from it? And so I actually did a Disney session with the whole team, 30 people, in one big room. I used 4 flip charts for those 4 different areas of the room. And literally I walked the team around from one flip chart, you know, and we looked at the dream. Okay, this is the merger, it's happened. What's the best that we can make of this? What's the difference is going to make for you? What the difference is going to make for the patients, for the trust, for the hospital, yeah, for, you know, the local area. And so we got all of these dreams down, you know, and difference it's going to make for these different people. Right. Now, how can we make sure we implement some of those things? Yeah, as the planners, what can we do? And then I put them into little working groups, and they started planning on different aspects in the group, about, you know, 5 or 6 in a team. And then they all came up and they did some planning. And I then got them to do the critiquing, you know, what might go wrong, what might happen, bam, and then got them to then assess where they felt they were now with the merger. And because they'd had time to talk about it as a group and also in their little sub-teams, everybody felt much more on board, and the management had a better way of being able to communicate and deal with their team that had come from the team. And so that way the group had to acknowledge that, you know what, I know I did get told about it, but I should have read the email or I should have looked at the newsletter. And at the same time, there were other ways where maybe actually they could have presented us with information. So that was really useful for this team, whereas they were actually, bam, really at loggerheads with each other, to actually come together, get the elephant out of the room, to talk about the stuff, you know, and to actually be able to work on it. That's definitely a fantastic way of using it. I also work with Chili's bottles. So you might own a Chili's bottles. They'd be, you know, really good, eco-friendly, a portable water bottle solution, and they've been launching a new range of bottles and upskilling their team and upgrading the scheme, and they had this thing called Made for Tomorrow. And so I virtually facilitated a session which enabled the marketing team, the production team, the administration team, the fulfillment team to come together as their teams and to then talk creatively about what they wanted to do. You know, what ideas do they have in marketing, in production, in administration, in fulfillment? And then a member of the management team facilitated the room. So we virtually created breakout spaces. They had one manager in each room that I'd pre-briefed about what we were going to do. And therefore, they then as a team did the 3 different aspects of the dreamer, and then the realist, and then the critic. And again, the team's got loads from coming up with this. So their marketing campaigns they're doing now came up as a result of doing this session at the beginning of last year. And so loads of different things that work really well from bringing a team together virtually from that point of view. You can even use this yourself. Change spaces though, sit in different locations, use different aspects, make sure the anchor, pre-anchor the states that you want before you work on what you want to work on. And give yourself time limits if that works for you, or allow yourself to just be free. If you want to do the dreamer whilst you're out for a walk and just dream, and then make a note or a voice memo, or just record what comes up for you. Again, each of these spaces can be really useful. If your planning happens in a particular room or at your desk, do it there. If your critiquing happens in a particular space, do it there. But do not do all 3 of them sat in the same space at the same time. That doesn't work, but have fun with the process. Works for really small things and really big things as well. That's it in terms of what I wanted to share from that particular point of view. Before I come to questions, I will mention that I do have a one-pager that I'm going to make available on the website, which is how to do the Disney strategy just in 7 very simple steps. It's got everything that we worked on today, but with a few extra questions. I didn't want to overwhelm you with information today. That information will all be available on the ANLP website, or you can get it from my website as well if you want to go and have a look at that. And in terms of my TEDx or anything else, again, you can go to that bit.ly link and get any other information. Well, we're 2 minutes over, it's 2 minutes past. But any other questions before we close for today? Because I'm not going anywhere, I'll be honest. So if anybody's got any other questions or anything they'd like to ask in terms of process or technique or anything else that's burning for you, please ask away. Fantastic. I mean, I take silence as a really good thing. No worries at all. Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, Andrea. Cool. In which case, I think that's time to call it a day today for today's session. Karen, I'll hand back over to you.
Say thank you so much, Andy. It's been really, really helpful. I know we've used this strategy before with the ANLP team, and it's been brilliant. I particularly found it useful, your case study at the end, because I used to live in that area, so know all about the Royal Free and Barnet and Chase Farm. But it's lovely to hear about a real life example where this has actually worked. So I think I can confidently speak on behalf of everybody here this evening to say thank you so much. It's been really, really educational. Really enjoyed it. And as Andy says, we'll edit this down, put it onto the website with the downloads and with the slides from this evening. So you'll be able to access that on the specific page on the ANLP website. So thank you all for coming this evening. And thank you so much, Andy.
No problem at all. Thank you, everybody.